So today we're going to look at using if error in Google Sheets to hide or customize error messages on formulas. So for example, here we have a divide by 0 error on our dividing the amount by the number of items. So we can customize this formula by wrapping it with an if error formula. And so we don't specify anything. It's just going to return a blank. Pull this open. You can see that it'll show the value if there's no error. Otherwise, it'll show a specified value if there is an error. And so if we just start up here, we can drag this formula down, and you can see that on this if error, if we can calculate the result without an error, it shows the value. Otherwise, it shows a blank. Now, if we want to show a custom error, we can simply put whatever text we want in here, drag it down, and you can see now that it fills in error. So another way you can use this if error is when you have an array formula. So if we have an array formula, we can do the same thing we had before and have this formula fill down instead of having a formula in each cell. And so when it runs into an error, we can wrap this with if error and have the same effect. We can also do this same thing there with a custom message. Now another thing we can do is on a VLOOKUP. So let's say we want to look up Fred. We can do our VLOOKUP and return the last name. You can see there, return last name. Now, we have a name that's not in there, or value that's not in that column. We get this in a error. And so we can do the same thing to wrap this in an if error to hide that value, or we can add a custom text to that. So one thing to note with if error is sometimes it'll end up hiding errors. And so you may have to do is strip the if error out of the formula and figure out what the root error was in case you have an error in the formula. So for example, if we do C to C, it says VLOOKUP values to out of bounds range. But if we wrap this in an if error, it still shows up as blank, even though it never will show anything because we have an error in the formula. So if you're having issues, strip out the if error, and then you can look at your error message and determine if it's an acceptable error or if there's something wrong with the formula. Another thing you can look at is a very similar formula called IFNA. And so IFNA basically does the reverse. So if there is an error, it shows a value. Otherwise, it shows value if there's not an error. So this is kind of the reverse, where if you want to find if there's an error, so you might use this in a match where you're trying to figure out if there's not a match, or something where a formula will return an error if it can't find it. And this allows you to then use that. So that is it for today. Tune back again soon for more tutorials.